We're going to be talking about 3 health epidemics that exist today. Some are even prophetic. First, there's a new CRISPR law that is being proposed to try and stop people from biohacking, because that's actually a thing now. But will this law be effective? Next, there is some new information on microchipping, and it's becoming more and more popular, this whole idea of microchipping. Could this actually lead to the mark of the beast? Some think so, some think it might be something different. And finally, people have suggested that biohacking and microchipping could be, or at least lead to the mark of the beast, but some of these things can affect our DNA. What about things today that can affect our DNA? What about things today that are giving us cancer? What about things that we're putting into our bodies that's completely unnatural? Glyphosate has been in the headlines a lot lately. Many of you have noticed this, so we are going to welcome on 2 health experts in one of the most riveting and informative interviews that I've ever had the honor to conduct. And they're going to tell us exactly what kind of danger we're all in right now and what we can do about it. All of that and more today on Into the Multiverse.
This is Into the Multiverse with Josh Peck.
Welcome to Into the Multiverse. I am your host, Josh Peck. Make sure you subscribe. If you're subscribing on YouTube, you have to click the bell for notifications. YouTube probably still won't notify you, so if it doesn't, just know that every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Central, you will get a new episode of Into the Multiverse. Trying something a little bit different today. So today we're going to do a longer format. Want to see how it goes, and we would love to hear from you. You can either email me directly at jpeck@skywatchtv.com, or you can leave a comment in the comment section below. Let us know what you think of this new format. So let's start with this CRISPR story. This comes from Technology Review. And I want to point off right off the bat, as you can see here, this is from August 9th of this year, so it's a very recent story. And the reason I bring that up is because one of the first things that they say is interesting. So in the article it says it's going to be illegal in California to sell gene therapy kits unless they carry a warning that says not to use them on yourself. But again, like a lot of these warnings, is that really going to be effective? Is that going to stop anybody from doing it if they're determined to do it? Now, what's interesting is this line right here that says, just one wrinkle, we're not sure any such kit exists, not yet anyway. Now, I don't know what this line is in reference to. A little bit later on, as we'll see, they actually do sort of clarify what they mean when they say gene editing kit, but you can do a simple search, and I've done one here that you can take a look at. You can do a simple search, CRISPR-Cas9 kit, and look at all of these ads. You have a whole bunch of ads that come up over here that you can see. And look, no funny business, just a strict Google search for CRISPR-Cas9. I didn't put any extra keywords or anything in there. CRISPR-Cas9 kit. And you get ad upon ad, clones, Thermo Fisher, AMSBO. There's a whole bunch of them. And here's articles. Here's more. Origin, this right here, the Odin, that's the one that is going to be referenced in the article that we're going to look at. So it's confusing that they say that because you can buy these kits. They're widely available. You can get them from many different manufacturers, as is proven here. But again, they're going to make a distinction that they'll explain, but I don't know how important it actually is to make this distinction. The fact is, these things are available today. Anybody can get them. You can get them. Your kids can get them. And we're living in an age where you can biohack. You can genetically edit yourself in your own basement, and there's no regulations around it. So this article says the Consumer Protection Rule is in a bill. It's signed by Governor Gavin Newsom on July 30th, and it will become law in January. It targets hobbyist kits employing CRISPR, the versatile gene editing tool that has revolutionized gene research. Now, it says sales of certain do-it-yourself CRISPR supplies will be prohibited unless they carry a bold notice, quote, stating that the kit is not for self-administration, end quote. Well, again, what would be the point of who is going to go out and buy a kit that is determined to use it? They get it, they see the label, and they decide, I probably shouldn't use it. If somebody's buying it because they want to use this on themselves, a label isn't going to do anything to stop that. So it continues. It's the first law in the U.S. to directly regulate CRISPR, says its author, Republican State Senator Ling Chang. Here's an actual tweet. I believe this is a tweet, or maybe it's a Facebook post. But Senator Ling Chang says, "I'm proud to announce the governor signed my bill addressing human biohacking. CRISPR is becoming widely available, but many in the scientific community have sounded the alarm that it could have negative consequences outside professional labs. The first ever legislation addressing emerging CRISPR technology will help prevent safety mishaps by amateur users of CRISPR kits. Learn more, and then she provides a link. Now, again, I think it's great that they are actually trying to take steps towards regulating this stuff. And usually, I'm not really in favor of a whole bunch of regulations on things, but on this, I am, because this is something that could become a public health crisis. You know, if you have edited genes that are allowed to just propagate in the gene pool, well, that affects the rest of us for generations to come. There is no putting that genie back in the bottle. So I'm all for regulations, but I don't know how effective just putting a warning label on this stuff is really going to be. I mean, I guess it's better than nothing, but still, I mean, I would say just ban it altogether. But maybe they're not able to do that. So it says the law appears to take aim at a California resident, Josiah Zahner, whose Oakland company, the Odin, sells genetic engineering supplies to amateurs online. He won notoriety in 2017 when he filmed himself injecting CRISPR into his own arm. And that's what we were talking about over here. You know, you do a Google search for CRISPR-Cas9 kit, and on the very first page is right here, DIY, do-it-yourself CRISPR kit, the Odin. So he's making this stuff available. That's a picture of this individual down here. So Zahner is saying, quote, "It's obviously targeting me," end quote. And he's, you know, if you're not familiar with this guy, he's this outspoken biohacker. He's also currently under investigation by the California Department of Consumer Affairs for practicing medicine without a license. So they're trying to get him on that too. So it says, asked for examples of products the bill could affect, Chang's staff provided a link to an Amazon ad for a $159 box of supplies sold by Zahner, which, quote, includes everything you need to make precision genome edits in bacteria at home, end quote. You know, there's also worries about what if people flush this stuff down the toilet? You know, what if they're done with their little experiment, they flush it down the toilet, and then it seeps into the water supply or into our sewer system and things like that, and ends up affecting other people. You know, there's a lot of danger here. It says that because that kit targets genes in bacteria, it wouldn't have any effect in humans, and it's not clear why it would need a warning label. Zahner says, quote, "It's like saying a skateboard needs to have a sticker to say it can't be used on the freeway. It doesn't make any sense," end quote. Well, I think it makes perfect sense. And to say that it has no effect in humans, I wouldn't be so quick to say that because even if that's proven true, would you still want to ingest this stuff? Would you still want this bacteria floating around in your water supply or infecting your crops? You know, I would think not. Now, MIT Technology Review is not able to find any product currently for sale by Zahner or others that would meet definitions set up by Chang's legislation. And that's the distinction that they're making. And that's why I said at the beginning, I don't know how important that distinction really is. Because, again, as we saw here, you can see all of these kits for sale from many different providers. But again, the distinction is that that these would not meet the definition set up by Chang's legislation. Well, doesn't that just go to show that this legislation is kind of pointless? I mean, it should be stricter. It should be more well-defined. That would include that whole list that you can buy online. But it says, in any case, the sale of do-it-yourself gene therapy products is already prohibited. In 2017, the FDA said selling gene editing products intended for self-administration is against the law because they haven't been approved. All right, but yet again, I know I keep going back to this, but yet again, you can find them here. So either the law is not well defined, or it's allowing for this stuff outside of the parameters of the law, or they're just not enforcing the law. So either way, it's still a big problem. It says that was the year that Zahner taunted health authorities by filming himself self-injecting gene-altering substances. And later, a separate startup company called Ascendance Biomedical said it planned to sell such independent gene treatments to the public. Zahner's injection was a publicity stunt. That's at least what they're saying. But in practice, commercial gene therapy involves transferring genes into the body using billions of viral particles, which Zahner and other biohackers apparently don't sell and which are hard to make. But again, hard doesn't mean impossible. People can still do this. It's still available. It's still possible to do. So Nicole Polk, an assistant professor at the University of California in San Francisco, says, quote, "We can't even make enough for medical trials right now," end quote. Now, Zahner said that starting in 2017, he did sell one CRISPR product that could target a human gene, the one that encodes a protein called myostatin. Removing that gene with CRISPR can enlarge the size of muscles. Zahner says he expected people might use the DNA instructions he was selling as a building block towards genetic enhancements. So there's that other distinction. Will it target a gene or not? But really, what are these kits doing? What are they meant to do? He says that he admits his customers misunderstood how many further steps would be involved, such as multiplying and purifying the CRISPR molecule. So he says, quote, "People were buying it and sending us messages. How do we inject this?" End quote. So he discontinued the product earlier this year. But that, again, that's that one specific product. If you go onto his site here, we'll just open this and show you. You have right here a do-it-yourself bacterial gene engineering CRISPR kit. Now, they say because this doesn't directly target the human genome, because it's bacterial gene editing, that it doesn't affect the human genome at all. But again, would you want to be ingesting this stuff? Are you comfortable with people doing their experiments, flushing it down the toilet, and having it infect your water supply or your crops or anything like that? And it comes with a whole bunch of experiments that you can do, apparently. But so there are products like this on his own website. So I don't know, just because he discontinued one product, and that's what this article is focusing on, that doesn't mean that all these products are discontinued. They're still widely available. So it says, why pass a law to regulate a product that doesn't exist? One reason may be that California leads the world in both technology and legislative nannying. Now, I totally understand the argument against legislative nannying, and usually I'm against that. Usually I don't want any of that. Most people don't. But here I would not consider this to be legislative nannying, because this is something that could actually affect public health. It's not just something that somebody is doing in the comfort of their own home and they're not hurting anybody else. This stuff can be passed on through generations. It can get in food supply, it can get in water supply. There's a lot of potential risk with this kind of stuff. I would not consider that legislative nannying personally. So it says Chang is the sponsor of numerous bills whose topic range from hit-and-run drones to microchipping dogs and cats at animal shelters. Via a spokesperson, she said she wanted to be proactive and is concerned about amateur use of CRISPR and its impact on consumer safety and public health. As well she should be. We all should be. However, again, this piece of legislation, I just don't know how much it's going to curb the problem. Lobbyists familiar with the bill's history say Chang's staff became alarmed by news articles describing how CRISPR could be misused. And these included an interview in Foreign Policy in which Jennifer Doudna, an inventor of the CRISPR tool, described the technology as racing forward without coordination or enough regulation. So again, that comes from the actual inventor of CRISPR, the CRISPR tool, saying that there should be more regulation on this, and it's worrisome that there isn't. If it was up to me, I say just ban the whole thing. We don't need it. But at the very least, we do need more regulation on it. Now, Oliver Racroy, it's a hard name to say, who's the vice president for government affairs at the California Life Sciences Association, which is a trade group, has said, quote, they said, oh my goodness, there seems to be an underground culture in do-it-yourself bio and do-it-yourself CRISPR, end quote. So he says that a worry was that citizens would flush homemade genetically modified organisms down the toilet. He continues, quote, is there a contagion scenario where things spin out of control, end quote. So he's saying that that was the concern. And it's a legitimate concern. Now, Rocroy and Chang's staff at first wanted to outright ban do-it-yourself CRISPR kits, but after the association pushed back, they settled on a warning. So this is one of those situations where a compromise doesn't really do any good. There's really no reason to put this through unless you can just ban the whole thing, and they should ban it because, again, it's a public health issue. It can affect the rest of us who don't want anything to do with it, who don't want to biohack. It can affect the rest of us, so it should be banned. And if they can't ban it, then what's the point of the legislation? That's not gonna sway anybody from trying. But here's a quote from Rocroy. He said, and he was explaining the association's objection, quote, "The downside of a ban is you are preventing people from carrying out experiments that could lead to something like computers in the 1980s. We didn't want to stop people from using the technology even if it's in their home," end quote. That's not the downside of the ban, and that is not the worry. You know, if you're experimenting with computers, if you're building a computer in your garage, there's not really much of a chance that that's going to affect your neighbor. You know, maybe you have a power outage or something if you're really doing some intense experimentations or something like that. But you're not gonna seriously affect the health of your neighbor. You're not going to be infecting his food in that way. You're not going to be doing something to him that he doesn't want done. That is not the downside of the ban. The downside of CRISPR and gene editing just in general being available to the public is that this could affect your neighbor in serious ways. Your neighbor could be ingesting bacteria that he didn't want to. Even if you say it's harmless, it doesn't matter. He could be ingesting something that you're trying to dispose of without him even knowing it. So that actually takes away some of the neighbor's freedom. I think it's a completely ridiculous comparison, trying to compare this to experimenting with computers in the 1980s. It says, arguably a more well-founded worry for legislators is that consumers might emulate experienced biohackers like Zaner, urged on by his promotional videos. There was a whole fad in the 90s of these prank shows. It wasn't just one, there were plenty of them. But these prank shows got really popular in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and then you had teenagers that would go out and try to film videos of their own. Some of them got seriously injured or even died trying to do these stunts or these pranks. And so some of the worry of the legislators is that videos showing how to biohack, which are available online today, there are manuals on how to do this stuff, but that will only progress. They'll get competitive. They'll try to one up one another, and that could lead to some catastrophic consequences. But the problem is it's not localized with the one person who is doing it. You know, so you might say, well, it's just the community doing it. They can do what they want. But again, this bleeds out to the rest of the public. So the comparison to those prank shows isn't really valid either, because while some got involved in the temptation, it didn't really affect other people who weren't doing it themselves. You know, if you have your friend shove you in a shopping cart into like a curb or something and you go flying in a bush, you're really the only one that's going to get hurt. Unless there's somebody standing there, they're not, you know, some innocent bystander, they're not going to be hurt, but even if they were, they could sue you anyway. So there's already legal restrictions around that kind of stuff. So the issue, it's not really a fair comparison to compare it to those types of prank shows, because again, this can bleed out into the public without any legal regulations around it. So that's where we are with biohacking today. The most that it seems like is going to happen is they'll put a warning label on it, which again isn't going to do anything. They will be able to just continue doing what they're doing, and what we need is either an outright ban on this stuff, or we need a lot tighter restrictions. And if it was up to me, I say just ban it all. We don't need it. Now, with biohacking, another concern that people have been talking about for years, especially in prophetic senses, has been implants, microchipping. And that's become quite popular today. It's actually, in some ways, it's kind of old news. It was really in the 90s, maybe late 80s, but in the 90s, where Bible prophecy experts started talking about that the mark of the beast might be a microchip. Before that, they would say it was like a tattoo or like a barcode that would be tattooed on your skin or on your hand or on your forehead. Then it went into RFID microchipping, and there are still some who say that. Most recently, the most recent idea kind of falls more in line with biohacking, that somebody might alter their genome to where they're not even considered human anymore. And maybe that is the mark of the beast because Jesus Christ died for human beings, for the salvation of humans, not hybrids, not Nephilim, not angels, not any of that stuff. But there is still some concern about microchipping. And it might not be the mark of the beast. It might be something that leads to it. Could be that. But it might not be the exact mark of the beast. But for those who might be unfamiliar with where microchipping is today, I wanted to bring this up and talk about it, and then, of course, get your opinion. You could leave a comment or email me. But this comes from Thomas Nett. So it says, in the not-too-distant past, computers were massive machines that could fill an entire room, but today they fit in the palm of our hands. And that's exactly right. I mean, all of us have, most of us anyway, just have a cell phone that fits right in the palm of your hand. And this is more powerful than computers, normal just home computers were not that long ago, a decade or two ago. And they're poised to become more powerful than even most computers today. But it says, for some, the next step in this ever-shrinking and evolving system is a microchip, no bigger than a grain of rice implanted directly into the body. While this may sound like the beginning of a dystopian sci-fi novel, it's actually a growing trend among a few technologically savvy individuals. There are people today that are microchipped. There are people that have implants in their hands, and they can turn their computer on or unlock their door with it. A while ago, if you've been following Into the Multiverse for a while, a long time ago, we interviewed Zoltan Istvan, who's the leader of the Transhumanist Party, and he is microchipped. So we talked to him about that. You guys can go back in the archives of the show and check out that interview if you want. You should. It was really interesting, really enlightening. So that is a thing that's happening today, but it says the use of embedded body microchips is categorized under the spectrum of biohacking, which is basically an umbrella term that covers a wide range of do-it-yourself practices, most of which involve the application of a systems thinking mindset to the human body. What it all boils down to is it's meant to improve the human body. Now, the way they sell it, and this is important to keep in mind, the way they sell this is by saying, well, we're just trying to cure heart disease or cure cancer. And I'm sure there are people out there that are well-meaning and they're using it for that. But we can't only look at that. We have to look at how it's going to be abused. With anything like this, you can't just look at the good intentions because we're never going to fully, as a human race, we're never going to fully commit to whatever the best of intentions are. There will be people that are going to abuse it. So there are two sides of that coin. There's the good intention side and there's the abuse side. How will this be abused, and do those risks outweigh the good that could be done? Because there are things that you can do to help with heart disease or help with cancer. We're actually going to be doing an interview in just a little bit with a couple of health experts that talk about just that very thing. You don't need biohacking. There are other avenues of research that could be done. There are things that you could do at home, but that's how they'll sell it. And then they'll say that if you're not on board, then you must be a heartless human being because don't you want to see cancer cured? Of course, we all do. My son had cancer at 5 years old, T-cell leukemia. Of course, that would be great if that didn't happen. But at the same time, there are other things that can be done that you don't need biohacking. You don't need microchips in order to do that. By the way, my son is in full remission. He is fine. He still has to go through a couple more years of maintenance therapy to make sure it doesn't come back. But besides that, he's great. So there are other avenues available, and research into those areas can make them better and better. But that's usually how they'll frame it. So it's important to keep that in mind. What's really going on, though, it's not going to stay at just restorative efforts. Curing somebody of heart disease or cancer. It's not going to stay there. It's going to move to enhancement, and that's the problem. That is taking God's design and trying to mold it and shape it into our own image as human beings. Now, we call it enhancement, but it's not really enhancement at all because it goes outside of God's design. We all remember what happened in Genesis 6 when the angels thought that they would make something in their own image, and they tried to enhance human beings. Look what happened with that. We got the flood not too long after that. Now, it continues on. It says, imagine being able to do everything you do with your smartphone now, but even faster. Imagine being able to enter your home, workplace, or car with just the slightest hand gesture. Imagine sending someone your information by pointing your finger at their phone. And by the way, this paragraph right here is not science fiction, if it'll let me highlight it. A lot of this is available right now. A lot of this is available today. You can actually get an implant in your hand that will unlock your doors. And a lot of this is being advanced. So it says that's exactly what these biometric chip implants are currently being designed to do. It serves as a way to connect people to IoT, meaning the Internet of Things, in a much more physical way by integrating the Internet of Things with the Internet of your own body. Now, for anybody who says, well, that's just the way future's going, that's where technology's progressing, that's just, it's not anything to worry about. People were worried about the internet and, we're pretty much okay. Well, think about how the internet has been abused. Again, you can't just look at the good intentions of the effort. You have to look at how it's going to be abused. More and more articles are coming out showing how Google and Facebook, they're recording your audio from your phone. They could be recording this conversation right now. They're actually recording it so they know how best to target ads to you, but it's an invasion of privacy. They're constantly being criticized for this, and it's not a conspiracy theory anymore. It's been proven to actually occur. So imagine how much more that could be abused if this is integrated through your whole body, through a microchip or a brain implant or whatever they're developing today. Imagine how much more that could be abused. But now it's not just in your phone, because you can throw away your phone. You can get rid of your phone. You can cancel your internet. You can do a lot. But it's not just in your phone. Now it's in your body. Not so easy to get rid of. So you got to look at where this stuff leads. So how do these things work? It says these microchips utilize radio frequency identification, that's RFID, and near field communication, that's NFC. So RFID microchips can be used as passwords or keys, while the NFC chips can be used to store electronic credit cards or cryptocurrencies. And that's another way that they'll try to say it. It's safer. It's harder to hack. Anybody can steal your credit card, but it's a lot harder to steal a chip out of your hand. All right, fair enough. But again, there are security measures that you can go through where you don't have to chip your hand. There are measures available. There are ways that you can protect your privacy online today without having to microchip anything. So it says the implants themselves are shaped like cylinders which contain a biologically safe epoxy resin, the microchip, and a copper antenna coil. Designed without a battery or power source, they remain inactive until they come within the field range of a reader device, which communicates with the device through a magnetic field. So who's actually using this? It says that according to some in the biohacking community, as many as 100,000 people worldwide have willingly hacked their own bodies with microchip implants. Now, I will say, microchip implants, I don't think it's a good idea, but with an implant, it should only affect the person who has the chip. It's not the same as editing your genome and then passing that on throughout generations or passing that on in the environment around you. If you get a chip, it's probably not going to affect your neighbor too much. Now, again, I don't think it's a good idea for people to be chipping themselves. But in those regards, I think it's up to us as Christians or as scientifically minded people to convince the culture, to convince people why it's a bad idea. With that, I think legislative efforts are a little bit different because I wouldn't see this necessarily as like a public health crisis or a potential epidemic, at least not in that way. But even then, there would be caveats with that. When they develop microchips enough to be able to edit your genome from the chip itself, then that crosses over into an area where it can affect future generations or possibly even the environment, depending on how it works. But as many as 100,000 people worldwide have willingly hacked their own bodies with microchip implants. Most people would not realize that it's that big of a deal or it's that widespread of a problem, but it is, 100,000. It says the trend is particularly popular in Sweden. So in 2018, it was reported that since 2015, so that's just a 3-year span, plan that over 4,000 Swedes had opted to have these tiny microchips implanted in them under their skin. So far, these tiny chips are mostly used to open doors and send digital business cards. However, don't expect things to stop there because in 2017, a Swedish rail line added microchip scanning as a payment option for train service. For train service. Now, again, imagine the abuse. Imagine this thing gets so widespread that you can't have a job or you can't be paid for your job unless you have a microchip. That is where it starts getting into Mark of the Beast territory. Again, you got to look at how this is going to be abused. Now, I mentioned before how we as Christians, we got to get good at being able to educate the culture on why this is a bad idea. Most people who are going for this stuff aren't Christian. Typically, most Christians are not going to be interested in this kind of thing. So given that, we have to be able to come up with good, logical, reasonable, scientific arguments on why this is not smart based on something else than the Bible. It's fine to have that as an argument for Christians, but non-Christians don't recognize the authority of the Bible. So for them, it's just not good enough to say, well, you can't do it because the Bible says so. Because they're just going to laugh in your face. They're not going to be convinced, and they're going to go get microchipped. So you got to actually have some reasons. Some reasons I like to bring up are the potential for abuse. How you can't trust any of these tech companies to protect your privacy. You can't trust them to not use your data for their own purposes. So how much more are they going to use that when it's implanted in your own body? And it's a lot more difficult to remove. Again, if the government or even just the tech overlords ever get tyrannical to the point that it does affect our day-to-day life, and I would say that we're there now, but a lot of people don't realize that. But if it gets to the point where it's just objectively, factually true, we can throw our computers away, we can throw our phones away, we can get rid of stuff. We still have that option. You may not have that option when microchipping becomes widespread and when it becomes accepted by most people. It's not going to be as easy to remove a microchip or a brain implant or something that's integrated into your own body. You're not going to want to cut your hand off just so Facebook doesn't target you with ads that you don't have any interest in. But of course, it goes further than just ads. It goes into personal information, health information. Imagine insurance companies who can measure your vitals based on a chip that you have in your hand, and they can increase your rates through that. So there's a lot of invasion of privacy type things going on here, and I like those arguments when trying to convince non-Christians of this kind of stuff. And then if they're interested, obviously you can talk about the mark of the beast stuff, but most non-Christians aren't going to be interested in that. So those are some good scientific, well-reasoned, logical answers for this. Now, it says in 2017, a Wisconsin-based company called 3 Squared Marketing made headlines when they gave their employees the choice to get microchipped. The chips for the company were designed to let the employees in the building use the copier and even pay for snacks. The public reaction to the controversial story was mostly negative. So that can give us hope. So that was in Wisconsin, that was here in the U.S., and this was just an option that this company gave employees. It wasn't enforced. It was just an option, and still the public reaction to this was negative. So that's a good sign. That's where we want to be. There are those, especially in the tech world, who are trying to normalize this stuff, though, and downplay the serious risks involved. So we have to stay awake, and we have to keep up to date on this stuff. Now, the main concerns that people have, according to this article, about microchip implants are primarily focused on privacy and cybersecurity issues. Yes, absolutely. It says, however, with the ubiquitous and sometimes careless usage of smartphones and wearables, the vast majority of users are already pretty vulnerable in those areas. Now, like I said before, I don't think that's a fair comparison because, yes, while our smartphones and wearable technology are absolutely infringing on our privacy, and we need to be cognizant of that, we have a much easier option to get rid of this stuff if we want to. It's really easy. And I'm saying this as somebody who makes a living making videos online. It's probably a good idea to limit how much time you're online and to be really, really careful when you sign those agreements. Obviously nobody's going to read the whole thing. It's like 100 pages for each one. But you have to go through and at least know what they're asking you to give up. what rights basically are they asking you to give up? We got to be aware of that. So I think and they sneak it in with those long agreements. That's how they do it, knowing most people aren't going to read it. But maybe it's time that we start paying attention to that stuff. I look at smartphones and all that stuff as just a precursor to where they ultimately want to go, and that's in this microchipping thing. Even on a spiritual level, how much better will our enemy be able to deceive us if we're welcoming this stuff and integrating it right into our own bodies? It's pretty frightening to think about how close we actually are to that, and in many ways are there now. To conclude this story, it says the implantable microchip does present some interesting practical applications, which is why some are enthusiastically embracing the idea of incorporating this kind of technology into their bodies. Still, with so many people against it, it's really too soon to tell which direction this trend will go in. I think they're going to continue to try to normalize this stuff. I think it will get more and more accepted, especially with young people, because that's where they're targeting anyway. But I think with older people, maybe people of like my generation and a little older, I think that we're going to realize the so-called practical applications are not worth the risk, especially with all the news stories coming out against Google and Facebook and all these privacy issues. I think those who are willing to look into these issues just a little bit deeper than what's provided by those who promote it, I think we're going to realize that, you know what, the risk is too great. I don't need to wave my hand over my lock to get into my house. I can use a key just fine. I don't need to store all of my passwords in a pill that I ingest. That is another thing they're developing, that I ingest every day. I can just remember my passwords or write them down somewhere, or use some other service like KeyPass or something like that in order to do it. So I think with all the options available that don't infringe on our privacy concerns, I think, I'm praying that more and more people are going to wake up and realize, you know what, this microchipping thing there's too much of a potential for abuse from those in power, from the tech elites. So that's my prayer, but I do believe, every generation, younger and younger and younger, is, just by nature, more and more ignorant because they're younger, they haven't been around as long. And because the tech giants are targeting kids, basically, teenagers and young adults, into this stuff, in those generations, I think that this is going to increase in popularity, and then we are going to look like just old fuddy-duddies who don't want to have any fun because we're going to be speaking out against it. And it's going to be, if you're around my age or younger, you may remember a time where there wasn't an internet. And do you remember, if you were a kid around that time, do you remember your parents trying to warn you about the internet? But if you were like me, you might have thought, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know about this stuff. I know. I'm the one that uses it. I know. And then when you grow up, you realize you really didn't know anything. I think we're going to see that. But the danger is, by the time these younger generations grow up to realize that they were ignorant when they were younger, a lot of the damage will already be done. They'll already have microchips, or they will already be biohacked, and that's something that can be passed on throughout the generations. They can ruin their entire family line and those of others in the world due to something like that. So the stakes are a lot higher, and that's why we need to keep up on this story. And of course, we at Into the Multiverse, we will keep up on this story as details develop. One more thing I want to talk about. So we talked about two things that are available pretty much now in a prophetic sense, but they're on the horizon. And we kind of, there's a lot of information about what about things that exist today that we're constantly putting in our bodies every single day. Yet it's not as widespread. The information isn't as widespread. The information is available, but it's not as culturally popular. People are starting to wake up to this, of course. But what about all the poisons that we are putting in our bodies every day? Is that possibly something that we should focus more on today than we do on the microchipping stuff or the biohacking stuff? Because this is a direct threat right now, and it is a crisis, an epidemic right now. Those are all important questions we should be asking ourselves, especially in the world that we live in today. And most people don't realize really how bad it has became. So I recently sat down with two health experts in this field that we're talking about. Why is glyphosate so readily available in the headlines now. I mean, you click on any headline and you're going to find something about glyphosate. What is that? Why are we putting it into our bodies? What are all of the hidden dangers in our food? Stuff that is literally altering our bodies now, giving us cancer now. While microchipping and biohacking and all that stuff is important to keep our eye on, it's important to focus on, what about the food and the water that we put in our bodies today? What is going on with this glyphosate epidemic? So I recently sat down with two experts in this field, certified health coach and all-around health expert Daniel Belt. If you follow me on Chalk Talk, you are familiar with Daniel Belt. We've had him on several times. This will be his first time on Into the Multiverse. And we also sat down with nutrition specialist and author of the book Timebomb, A Genocide of Deadly Processed Foods, Joe Horn. As you're going to see in this interview, things are really bad out there. They are. We're not going to lie about it. We're not going to sugarcoat it, but it's also not doom and gloom. There is good news. There is hope. So this is not a hopeless situation, which that's great news. And there are some practical steps that you can take today, starting right now, to make sure that you're not just another statistic in this glyphosate epidemic. There was many reasons that I wanted to do this interview. First off, there was a story recently that came out about how Bayer is offering $8 billion to settle Roundup cancer claims. I don't want to spend too much time on the story because I do want to get to the interview, but it says that Bayer AG is proposing to pay as much as $8 billion to settle more than 18,000 U.S. lawsuits alleging its Roundup herbicide causes cancer, according to people familiar with the negotiations. You can go to newsmax.com if you want to find that full story. And also, Roundup, it's riddled with glyphosate. Check this out. Common weed killer, glyphosate, increases cancer risk by 41%, study says. So this was a recent study that was done. We're going to get into it in the interview, but it says that glyphosate, an herbicide that remains the world's most ubiquitous weed killer, raises the cancer risks of those exposed to it by 41%. Now, you might be thinking, well, I don't use Roundup. I don't use that in my yard. I'm fine. This stuff is everywhere. You don't have to use it. If anybody even close to you has used it, then you can be affected by this. It's in your foods. There's even some things we have to pay attention with food that's labeled organic. So we're gonna talk about all of that and much more in this interview. Again, it is with Daniel Belt and Joe Horn. So you're gonna want to check this out. Watch this. Hey guys, thanks for joining me. So we've been talking about this recent story about how Bayer is offering $8 billion to settle Roundup cancer claims. This brought up something else that I've seen a lot in headlines today. I'm going to make sure I say this right. Glyphosate. I've been seeing this a lot in news. Recently, you, Joe, actually just sent me a headline. Glyphosate found in urine of 93% of Americans tested.
That's right.
This is crazy. So for people who aren't aware of the whole glyphosate thing, what is it? What does it do? How bad of a problem is this?
Glyphosate is one of the lead ingredients in a product called Roundup, but it's being used in our farms. It's being used agriculturally. Corporations like Monsanto now own the copyrights to many seeds, so that even farmers that want to grow their own vegetables and get away from all the herbicides and all of this are being challenged in court to give up their rights to do that, so that Monsanto can then own more of the food share.
It's crazy a seed can be copyrighted.
Oh, it's especially when they've genetically modified the seed and now own the patent to a seed that God never actually intended for humans to consume. But glyphosate, I'm just gonna share a couple of things with you. And this is from a laboratory at the University of California, San Francisco. Glyphosate, the most used herbicide in the world, has been found in the urine of 93% of Americans during a unique testing project carried out by the laboratory at the University of California, San Francisco in 2015. Why do we care? The CDC says that the health risks from pesticide exposure depend on the toxicity of the pesticides, the amount of a person is exposed to, and, give me a sec, because Daniel's bursting.
I can tell he's about to jump up from his seat.
Well, and so many people are, but a person is exposed to, and the duration and the route of exposure. Noting evidence suggests children are at higher risk Their immune systems have not adapted well to this at all. Pesticide residues have been found to be present in 70% of our produce sold in the U.S.
Wow.
So when you go to the grocery store and you try to eat right, and you go in, I'm going to make a kale smoothie, and I'm going to put garlic clove, and I'm really going to detox, and I'm even going to spend more money. Instead of eating cereal, I'm going to do the right thing. You might actually accidentally be increasing your exposures to everything that create cancer, lymph node dysfunction, endocrine problems, immune system, autoimmune system troubles. More than 92% of kale tested in the U.S. has been found to contain 2 or more pesticide residues, and a single sample of conventionally farmed kale could contain up to 18 different pesticides.
Jeez, does this count in stuff that's labeled as organic and stuff like that?
So when you get food, there are several games being played with organic labels that we talk extensively about in the book Timebomb, and there's just way too many games and things to cover in a brief format like today. But in a nutshell, I can tell you that safely, when you go with foods that are organic project verified or USDA, which is becoming weaker at the moment, and there's people pushing back now against even like the USDA organic labeling systems. A lot of the gaming there, people are pushing back to hold them to account. And right now, one of the best things that we have going for us, and I'm sure Daniel will agree, is our agricultural independence. This is family farms. This is people pushing to eat organic. They're pushing back against people that want to introduce the game loops and the holes in organic labeling. Let me share another Harvard study found that women undergoing fertility treatment who ate more pesticide fruits and vegetables, again, this goes back to assuming that you're doing the right thing for your body. You know, I'm creating a little human being in a womb. I want to make sure that baby has nutrients. Were found that when they increased high pesticide fruits and vegetables, aka the things you find at the grocery store, were less likely to have a live birth.
Wow.
Deformities, mutations, cancers in small children, cereals, grains, tap water. Daniel, talk to us about tap water. People every day are drinking poisons they're not even aware of. I mean, when they think about their diet, they're only thinking, let's avoid fast food, and I should be better than if I don't. But they don't even consider the water sources that they're getting. How do you get weed killer in water?
Yeah, this blows my mind too, and this is why this is so important, because we talked earlier in the episode about dangers with microchipping and biohacking, and all of those are problems that are on the horizon. They're here in a lot of ways now, but focusing too much on those, I think, obfuscates away from this kind of stuff, especially if it's in our tap water at home. Yeah, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, and actually, as per the previous conversation, relation to technology and how all the things that are affecting us, this is the most significant thing affecting us. And glyphosate we're picking on right now because it deserves it. But there's many other things that could also be associated with that. But it is so pervasive, it's quite amazing. And so glyphosate, it was not patented as a weed killer. It was patented as an antibiotic.
Exactly.
And this is an important distinguishment because, and this is what allowed for it, because it targets the pathways in plants exclusively and not in humans, and which is what allowed them to do this. And so whenever it inhibits an enzyme in the plant, right? And so we spray it down, and this goes all over our fields, and they blanket the field, and actually very little of the glyphosate content actually just goes to plants. It goes to the whole field, the whole soil ecology.
Right.
And when I say soil ecology, that's the bacteria and things that live in soil.
Right.
And this is actually the most important thing because it fundamentally disrupts the ecological state of the soil, and then a lot of processes can't happen. It specifically inhibits kind of the way that amino acids are converted to bioavailable states for humans.
Right.
And so not only does it do it from the plant, so you're wanting to go and get amino acids, which we have 200,000 amino acids essentially make up the human body, and 9 of those actually can't be made by the human body, and those are the 9 essentials that we have to get outside of ourselves. So when then we put this stuff into our soil, it inhibits that, and it's bacteria that breaks these things down. Well, then we eat it, and we know that bacteria in our stomach is responsible for huge amounts of our own nutrition, not
Right.
just, but in all of our body. So it doesn't just affect it on the plant. We then take it into us, and these affect the epithelial linings,
Right.
the stomach linings, also passing through the blood-brain barrier and things like this,
Right.
by creating permeability in these layers. So there's all kinds of things that occur. It evaporates. So whenever glyphosate evaporates, it raises up into the sky, and then we end up breathing it, which is actually
Right.
more severe in its particulation than it is actually in its liquid form. You just don't get the same volume. But
Right.
it's still like the worst. And you're breathing an antibiotic. That's essentially what that's implying.
There was a recent
So-
report, too, that says glyphosate, the researchers from the University of Washington evaluated existing studies and found that that you have a 41% higher risk of cancer if you're exposed to glyphosate than if not. So if
Yeah.
we're breathing that in, 41%, that's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge, but I also, before people absolutely lose their mind, I want to bait you just for a minute, let you know, before this panel closes, though we can't give you every step to make yourself impervious to all this stuff, we're going to give you some very good tips on how to begin today with where you're at to sidestep or at least mitigate some of the effects of this. And to answer a question that you asked me a minute ago, what about USDA organic labeled foods?
Right.
Can you sidestep this? You can dramatically reduce. There are concerns that because of birds flying over and cross-pollinating seeds from one farm to the next, things that get sprayed 30 acres away, air and rain carry it over to another. Yes, and in that regard, what mankind is doing to the earth is absolutely devastating, and I'm not going to candy coat it. It's
Right.
getting very hard to avoid these things. However, there is a massive difference, and there's a ton of research that you could independently do, or, again, I
Yeah.
defer to the book Timebomb if you want some of the statistics.
That's what it looks like. And we'll let you know how you can get a hold of it in just a minute here. But there are a lot of really practical steps any of you at home could take, way more than we would be able to talk about during the time of this interview.
Although,
Because of-
to interject really quickly,
Sure.
we are going to in the future be providing programming over things we can do. It's not, we don't want to just give doom and gloom. We really want the premise of what we're doing here to be hope, and not hopeful based in, just hope, but hope based in reason. And so there's a lot of things that we can really do, as to which he was alluding to, and we're going to provide more of that programming.
But you can start today to dramatically reduce the exposures that you and your children are up against with this stuff. Clean water is a huge one. Also, there are seals now on some of my, and again, I don't brand endorse, because as soon as I publicly brand endorse, unless it's something I'm comfortable carrying at the Skywatch television store, companies get bought out. So if I make a
Right.
statement like, oh, I like this particular kind of oatmeal, and then 6 months later I've created a soundbite of that, it gets archived somewhere, somebody finds that and they start eating that oatmeal for the rest of their life. But in the meantime, they've got bought out by a large corporation, like, I'm just using Nestle as an example.
Right.
Then there's this question about quality control, ingredients from seed to shelf. Did they actually put the work into making sure that we're sidestepping chemical exposures? So there are seals, for example, now that will literally say on the front of them, things like from farmers we know, or you'll see a little seal at the bottom that will say independently bio-certified glyphosate free. I love to support brands that are making a very proactive effort to announce at the onset, not just that it's generically organic and then you're to go independently research, although that's a healthy thing to do and I do it all the time, but for the layperson who just doesn't have time to face the avalanche, who are raising children and working their jobs, and they're like, I just can't even watch a panel like this, guys. I'm seriously drowning in despair, and 5G technology is coming,
Yeah.
and what am I supposed to do?
Sounds incredibly complicated.
Oh, it's just
and-
too much.
Yeah.
Great resource would be an example, something like Timebomb, but also Daniel. Let's get back to water, because if I had to point at one thing apart from cereals and the foods we eat every day, one of the fastest way to get birth control residues, antibiotic residues, and weed killer exposures every day, even if you were to eat completely organic, if you're not doing something about your own tap water or well water, if you're on a well, you are not immune from this stuff. I have a well at home that's 300 feet deep and it's less than a year old. I still use a water filter. But go ahead and talk to us a little bit about how do you get clean water if that is one of the fastest ways to disease right now?
Yeah, and the water really is the fastest way to disease right now, and that is we are so much constituted of water. Our water is in all of the aspects of agriculture, sewage, rain runoff, and
Right.
all different kinds of things. So there's actually a couple really positive things to bear in mind. One thing is shown that over time, soil organisms having good bacterial ecology, so if we can return our soils to the right ecology by using the right practices in water, organisms can break it down eventually, but you have to stop giving it glyphosate. So that means there are actually regenerative practices that we can take that will offset this, and we can restore our stewardship over the earth. Like we are meant to be good stewards. Like these things have laws and reason behind them. They're created in a very specific way, and we are the ones that are responsible for that. And it's shown now that if we're willfully ignorant to that fact, we pay for that fact.
Hugely.
Yes, and at any moment that we go back to and reinstitute the practices by which govern our earth through biologic, so to speak, and get away from this chemical warfare that we got going on, poisoning us at the most base levels, and then that goes inside of us, we have real chances to undo these things. And so there was relatively recently, some tests done on water filters associated with glyphosate. And we're going to, again, go into this probably a little bit more depth in the future. A high quantity of filters tested, all the way from gravity filters like large Berkey filters, all the way down to sport bottle filters and pitcher filters and ones in between. They had, basically tested all these, not every brand on the market, but there was one there were a couple of the sports bottle ones removed up to upwards of like 57% of glyphosate, which I think is actually quite good considering you just put it in a sport bottle.
Right.
And so you have a number of your water pitchers you might be used to, like Pure or Brita or something to that
Certainly
effect.
better than nothing, but if you're a glass half empty guy, you're thinking, but I'm still getting
50%.
40 times more glyphosate than our great-grandfathers did, you know?
And one of the ironies behind this a little bit was the fact that some of the sports bottle filters filtered better than some of the tabletop filters, so the pitcher filters. So a lot of it's about the quality of it. There was one filter in particular that was of the pitcher kind that removed 100% of detectable glyphosate.
Wow.
100%, like literally no scientifically significant amount of detectable glyphosate, and that's huge. I mean, that is huge. Now, chances are you're going to have to change that filter on a somewhat regular basis just based on the volume that we're exposed to.
Now, people are going to be wondering, which one is it, Daniel? Which one is it? So, at the time of this recording, are you comfortable telling them which one it was?
No. And I will, but I'm going to.
But we have reasons, guys.
Yes.
It's not to withhold information. It's let me just interject, because I would be thinking the same thing. Which one is it? Which one is it? We would encourage you to safely check out, go to Google and just type out, water filters and either do your own research and find maybe some of the results that Daniel was able to find. I've watched this, and again, I'm not going to name big corporations, but supplements that I used to personally take at one time just 2 years ago, I would have said, these are the ones, these are the ones. I've had to redact that position, and I thought at the time, had I said that in Timebomb, for example, I could have devastated a whole generation of people now that are getting a huge disservice in quality ingredient controls. Corporations get bought out by very anti-mom, very anti-breastfeed, very pro-vaccine type corporations that will do anything and everything as soon as, they got the deep pockets. They buy a family-owned company and they start swapping things out.
Well, it makes sense why you're not comfortable actually giving out the specific product, because you just never know what's going to happen with those companies in the future.
But we're not going to leave it totally ambiguous. Daniel, we actually at SkywatchTelevisionStore.com do carry some very phenomenal water filtration systems.
Well, and really it's kind of beyond phenomenal, and that's what this bore out in. So they technically say that Berkey's filter 75% of glyphosate.
And if you're not familiar with a Berkey, maybe we can put up an image for you and maybe a link to the Skywatch Television Store. But go ahead.
Sure. But under practical tests by third party, it removed the big Berkey filter, removed 100% of the glyphosate.
Wow.
So not
phenomenal.
like way beyond, and I assume that there's probably some liability error that they're hedging on a bit when they make their claims. But when put through multiple tests, they came out at 100% removal. And the good thing, at least to Berkey, and I can speak to that at least, for our purposes, is it removed a vast amount of anything that was really It's kind of a gold standard. And there was one other one. Again, I won't get into mentioning that name, but it was 100% as well. And there was only 3, and one was the water pitcher, and 2 were the gravity filters. And but the other one, and I can't speak completely educatedly about it, so you can't hold me this exactly, but you could check it out yourself. And I can't remember the exact name of it, but they use plastic reservoirs, which I wasn't in favor of, really. And so, but that again, 100%. And if it can be done as a gravity filter, or especially as a pitcher filter, it would also should be done on your shower filter as well, because people don't realize that whenever we ingest that water, just not orally, whenever we shower. It's why we wrinkle, because we're saturated with the water and the constituents in the water.
And if people are thinking, okay, I've never heard of a Berkey. Some people get it confused with Berkeley, and they're not sure what it even means. And you're thinking, surely a filter like that is thousands of dollars. We have models right at the $199 price point if you want one of the smaller Berkeys. But I mean, they cap at, I think, under $400. This is all from memory, but under $400 for the Royal Berkey. Well, and so, okay, the CDC, I'm going to go back to something they've said, and maybe I will stop with this, because I want to address, we don't have time to go through the whole premise of the book, Timebomb, but if you're still unfamiliar with that, it deals with autoimmune disease, reversing things like Crohn's, fibromyalgia, digestive issues, gallbladder issues, chronic fatigue, brain fog, so much of the stuff that people deal with every day that their traditional medicine practitioners have told them is normal aging, or it's just the times we live in, or they've bumped up to the statistical norms. And Daniel, you know this is true, that like with testosterone dropping in our men, over 1,000 points since 2 generations ago. So let's say my great-grandfather had 2,700 as a high T count in his man. He's a man with 2,700 active testosterone in his body. The normal now for my age is about 550. That would be on the low side of it. But because everybody's has fallen, it's now normal. There's nothing normal about it. Does this make sense?
Yeah, so, it's like the average. But
the average is, okay, so that's the average, but is it where God wants his people? Are people suffering? And let me just throw this out there. The CDC explains that this is a quote, a wide range of health effects, acute and chronic, are associated with exposures to some pesticides, including nervous system impacts, skin. I've seen guys with MTHFR genetic conditions or no known illness that have this constant boils and skin rashes and things like this. Their doctors have called it psoriasis of the skin, and they've given them ointments or oral meds for this. It doesn't do anything for them. They suffer. Eye irritation, retinal tinnitus, brain fog, cancer, and endocrine disorders, the inability to sleep at night, the inability to produce hormones, the inability to create proper stomach bile for the breaking down of food, which leads to gallbladder issues. So then traditional medicine wants to just start surgically removing things because they hurt. Yeah. We as a people have walked so far away from the laws of God. Daniel kind of hinted at when he talked about the soil and the way that God had created it originally and what we've done to basically destroy so much of it. I just want to leave viewers with this. There is hope. Try not to let the daily, nuclear bombardment of what is in social media about things like 5G technology, pesticides, herbicides. Remember that God knew all of this would be happening in 2019, and he put you here for a reason anyway. And so maybe it's about teaching our kids to avoid this stuff. Maybe it's about reversing disease through the God-given principles of how we're to take care of our temple. But also, we just want to shed light on darkness for those that are trying really hard, but are still experiencing, chronic fatigue or upset of the stomach, or they have stress or irrational anxiety. So much of this starts in the gut tube.
Let me piggyback on one thing you just said, Joe. You'd mentioned a variety of issues that this can create, some endocrine derangement, skin issues, just a whole variety of things,
tons of
colitis,
stuff.
Crohn's,
Right.
and totally tied also to the eliminative organs, the colon, colitis, Crohn's, diverticulitis, these vast array of diseases that we're struggling with now as a people. And the big trend is probiotics, and of which is a powerful tool for us to use to help people out. But we have so destroyed the culture within, the kind of ecosystems in the body that these actually kind of fall on barren soil in so many ways. So the other really big positive to actually come out of this conversation is the fact of how much money you can save. Because this, we have probiotics, actually bacterial ecology of your mouth has a lot to do with cavities. Bacterial ecology in your nose has a lot to do with sinus infection. It is kind of everywhere. So, and this glyphosate continuously breaks down this entire process from the beginning to the end. And if we correct this on the most base levels, so by reducing something, by taking glyphosate out of our lives in the small steps into which we do, we can greatly save ourselves huge amounts of money. Not just from not buying probiotics to help our upset stomach or our colitis or our Crohn's, but by preventing the scenario that ever occurs in the first place. And that keeps you out of the hospitals, it keeps you away from co-pays, keeping your premiums down. That's the other thing about our sick care system. And that's what it is. It's a sick care system. It isn't a health care system. Once you're liable, you're always liable. If I had a heart murmur at 20 and I then got my health right, and then everything completely redeems and corrects itself and regenerates, then in turn, I'm still liable for the problem I had the first time. I'm in great health by comparison to 20 years ago. And,
exactly.
when I was in my early 20s, high blood pressure in the Army, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, insomnia, serious, metabolic derangements, as well as endocrine derangements, where, my hormones weren't functioning correctly. And, now it's 25 years later.
But at that time, you were eating the SAD diet, too.
That was a sad diet. And
running on your youth.
A lot of stress.
I did the same thing, Tons of stress, running on adrenaline.
SAD diet is standard American diet.
The SAD diet is standard American diet. It's just whatever you see that makes sense to you to eat that day. Whether it be handy or tastes good.
And especially, and I think that this is even more true because, it was quite some time ago. But, being in the military, you had to eat what you could get when you could get it and as much fuel as you could get, right? And we didn't ever even talk about these things. This kind of information didn't exist, even though the reality existed, right? So it shows that, and as a kid that kind of grew up living that way, and there's kind of a phrase in healthcare circles, you can't exercise your way through a bad diet.
That's
what I mean?
Well, that's
it will offset a lot. Because I'm eliminating. My lymph is bouncing and my lungs are taking up a lot more. Sweating and doing all this stuff. But it will always catch you. The truth bears witness to itself. So this is just evidence. So we don't like all this disease, but it's just evidence for the nature of our
that I bring
priorities.
Water up so much.
Yeah, and it's also the easiest thing to address because even for a relatively small amount of money, when we know this is associated with so many diseases, we can really kind of get at that and save ourselves a lot of money. And that's really what I'm getting. And not only what you're saving your children and your grandchildren, they matter to me. I probably matter to you, is what I'm guessing. And so there is a whole lot that can be done, and with that money, we can really do much greater and better things in our lives. And like you said, to kick it off, vote with our money. That's
vote with your money.
Vote with your money. If you show me your pocketbook, I'll show you what you respect.
That's right.
And so
and you empower those that are at the front lines trying to bring you good food. You're helping them do that because how many of us can make our lives defined by standing in front of city council 7 days a week? But you see what I'm saying? Not suggesting that we shouldn't do that. I write my congressmen, I write my senators. I'm a good I'm a good American citizen. I do my part to vote. I and all of that. But at the end of the day, if I continue to buy the things that I know are bad for me and eat them, that is irrelevant.
Yeah, and it's on us.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and then it's on
I didn't
us.
want it that much.
Right.
But anyway, so, the idea of eating organic, man, there's so many things. How do you detox from glyphosate? There's so many things we just don't have time to talk about in this panel. But I just encourage people to check out Timebomb because there are so many, like you talked about probiotics. One of the things Daniel has suggested that I do, and this has helped a ton, is eat fermented foods. Maybe being more powerful
Yeah.
than taking a spendy probiotic.
Yeah, without getting
Kraut, kimchi, this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's fermented fiber specifically.
Now he's going to teach a clinic on fermented fiber.
I won't. No, I'll keep it really brief.
You gotta love this guy because you can say almost anything, and it's interesting. 1 hour later, the clinic comes to a close. You know,
I do that. But to glyphosate, I would say the outside of the two things we just suggested, fermented fiber is the single best thing you could do because of the way it reinitializes. Giving you probiotics, it is a probiotic. It gives you the fiber by which they live on, but all the things produced from the bacteria metabolizing that fiber heal the digestive linings. They heal and reestablish metabolic pathways. And this is a deeply
and they start
complicated
choking off it's way more complex.
It
but
is.
They start
It's so
choking off the
complicated.
overgrowth of candidus and SIBO and all this other stuff that people are plagued with.
Yeah, and I would even say that that's the beauty of God, because it precedes that we don't need to know all that. Like, I am utterly fascinated. I study all day, every day, essentially.
He does.
And,
he really does.
And but that there is real, tangible things that we know that we can do. And something as small as adding just one bite of kimchi a day or two or kraut or something like that goes to directly addressing the metabolic dysfunction that comes with association of glyphosate specifically. Wow. And there's a couple other things that follow this. And again, we will hopefully be providing more of that programming. Yeah.
$6 for a jar of really good
therapy.
Yeah, therapy that's going to last you 3 weeks if you do it, in small portions.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. Super cheap. And almost always, your path to health is the cheapest, simplest, most direct path to fulfilling your nature.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying before, too. I mean, even with the Berkey water filter, a couple $100 or $300 or $400 might seem like a lot at first for some people, which is totally understandable. But think about all the money you'll be saving without all the extra medical bills by not doing it.
Yeah.
So that makes total sense.
And we're meant to feel good in our lives too. This is a lot of reason why we feel bad, like the aches and pains. We could literally associate almost all major conditions from derangements of the digestive and metabolic system. So you're talking about Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, developmental diseases in children, fertility, whether you're motivated in the morning or whether you go to sleep at night. It literally is pervasive on almost every
This
human
is
biological
literally
level.
why we wrote Timebomb. Please get a copy of Timebomb because it will put so much into perspective for you.
And we're going to let you know how you can get a copy of this. That'll be after this episode. But yes, please do. Just really quickly, you can go to skywatchtvstore.com and find that there. But we got some other stuff that we can put with it. We'll tell you about that in a minute. Well, guys, thank you so much. It's been incredibly informative, and I think the audience is going to be able to get a lot from that. It's good that there is hope. It's not all doom and gloom like the both of you said. So thank you for coming on and sharing.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thanks, Josh.
All right, well, there you have it. Yes, it is getting really bad out there. Nobody's denying that, but it is not hopeless. There are things that you can do today to drastically improve your overall health and quality of life. I suggest going and watching the interview again. Daniel and Joe gave so many good, informative steps that you can take. It would be easy to miss out on a couple. I suggest going and watching the interview again. Get a notebook, take some notes, because it's really important, and there's a lot that you might have missed. Also, if you can, pick up the book Timebomb. You can get that at skywatchtvstore.com. We're actually going to tell you how you can get a hold of that and some more products involved with that. But the good thing is there is hope. There is a way out. There are things that you can do to drastically improve your overall health and quality of life. Now, I want to know what you all think. First off, I want to know what you think about the longer format for Into the Multiverse. Do you like it where it has, different segments that we go into, we do interviews? Do you like this format, or are you more in favor of the shorter, quick, get-to-the-point episodes? I want to know what you think. Leave me a comment in the comment section below, or you can email me directly at jpeck@skywatchtv.com. That is also the email to use if you have a question for the show. I would like to start doing a Q&A segment. I think that would be a good thing to implement on the show. We used to do that when the show first started, and I think it would be a good idea to bring that back. So if you have an Into the Multiverse related question, you can send that to jpeck@skywatchtv.com. But also in the comment section, I want to know what you think about what we talked about today. Do either biohacking or microchipping, or both, have anything to do with the mark of the beast, the prophetic mark of the beast? Also, are those prophetic threats, are they more or less important for us today than our current health epidemic? The current health epidemic that we are facing today with glyphosate and all this stuff in our food, not even really being able to trust organic labels, is that more important for us to focus on today? Or should we say, well, there's not a whole lot we can do about that, so let's really dig into the prophetic stuff with microchipping and biohacking? Or is it a combination of both? What should that ratio look like? Lastly, I want to know, do you out there viewing from home, do you know of any steps that you have taken at home for yourself or for your family that you've been able to use to improve your health or quality of life in any significant way? I would like to know what you have to say about all this. Please leave me a comment in the comment section below. While you're there, do not forget, if you're viewing this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, click the bell for notifications, and if YouTube still doesn't notify you, which it probably won't, if it still doesn't notify you, just know that every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Central, you'll get a new episode of Into the Multiverse. And again, this has been Into the Multiverse. I am your host, Josh Peck. Into the Multiverse, the show that dares to expose hidden truths that the world wants to keep secret and the church would rather ignore. You'll get that stuff here and nowhere else. Thank you all so much for joining me. Until next week, love you all. Take care. God bless.
As many as 80% of Americans are carrying a time bomb. A medical crisis in their bodies right now, unaware that they will soon develop prolonged chronic illness, autoimmune disease, or even cancer. Today's frightening truth is citizens are being poisoned every single day without their knowledge. A health epidemic largely brought on by industrialized food is destroying our genetics and immune systems through deadly modified organisms, carcinogenic materials, and life-threatening chemicals commonly found in most of today's processed groceries. Coming this April in the groundbreaking new book, Timebomb, by Joe Ardis Horn and Ali Anderson. You'll be put in charge of your health once again as commercial marketing games are exposed and the expose of the year unveils how easy it is to avoid toxic ingredients, identify organic and safe foods, and make healthy eating affordable. You will learn how neuroscience is confirming an amazing gut-brain connection that holds the key to maintaining physical, hormonal, emotional, and mental wellness. With powerful insights from health professionals for maintaining superior physiology and reversing chronic illness without a weight loss diet. Timebomb is set to become your most important field guide for avoiding a national health epidemic more pervasive than anyone could have ever imagined. Timebomb.
There is a genocide of deadly processed foods happening right now in the United States, creating a health epidemic more pervasive than anyone ever imagined. But now, you can arm yourself with the knowledge to keep you and your family from becoming its next victim. Skywatch TV is proud to announce the Timebomb special offer. When you order Timebomb from the Skywatch TV store, you'll also receive the Timebomb Companion DVD. This incredible DVD includes special, never-before-released, off-the-record interviews with healthcare professionals like Dr. Ralph Umbriaco, Dr. Joshua Vance, and Dr. Matthew Sams on the current food crisis in the U.S., and tips on how to achieve your optimal physiological health. This DVD is nearly 5 hours in length and also includes the entire Skywatch TV Timebomb television series with Joe Horn, Ali Anderson, and Derek Gilbert. But that's not all. You'll also receive Eat This and Live for Kids. This colorful, fully illustrated book by Dr. Don Colbert walks you step by step through how to begin teaching your kids to love the foods that will love them back. While out shopping, how to avoid deadly toxins in many common kids' foods and household products, what to feed your kids from preschool to preteen, healthy snacks they will love, and what supplements they'll desperately need, and so much more. But the health epidemic isn't just limited to humankind. Also included in this unbelievable special offer, Joe Ardis Horn's best-selling book, The Dead Pets Don't Lie Expose, and companion DVD. This shocking book and DVD collection sounds the alarm on the scandalous practices of the commercial pet food industry. Learn how the FDA is allowing big scams where detestable, poisonous pet foods are being passed off as healthy and causing pets to die prematurely. You'll learn everything you need to know in order to quickly read pet food labels and allow your pet to avoid these toxic ingredients. Sold separately, these items hold a retail value of over $100. Yours now for a donation of only $30 plus shipping and handling. Take control today. The Timebomb special offer is your field guide to avoiding the deadly processed foods and ingredients that are creating a massive wave of health crisis in America. This information covers every member of the family, the adults, children, and even our pets. Begin transforming how you and your family eat and live now. The Timebomb special offer. Order now at the Skywatch TV store online or call 844-750-4985.